Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar on impact of COVID-19 on internal control over financial reporting and internal controls framework. My name is Mona Lisa Bhagat, and I'm a manager with RiskPro India. We shall wait for a couple of minutes for other participants to join in. Thank you. Good morning again. Thank you for joining the webinar. I want to give you a brief overview of our company, RiskPro India Ventures Private Limited. RiskPro India is a risk advisory consulting firm. We are in business since 9 years with our head office in Mumbai and presence in 7 cities. We have served 425 plus clients and we are a team of 50 members with 10 plus strategic partners. We have our 4 main business verticals, that is risk advisory and assurance, technology, training, and recruitment. In risk advisory and assurance, we conduct GDPR, SSA 18, IFC reviews, risk-based internal audit, IT audit, etc. With technology, we provide software for legal compliance management, internal audit software, robotic process automation software, third-party risk management, etc. through our technology partner firms. In training, we conduct in-person and online trainings on topics like ERM, risk assessment, AML, infosecurity as per company requirements. In recruitment, we provide full-time and part-time internal auditors and virtual risk managers for audit and risk requirements. So today's webinar will be for 60 minutes, out of which 10 to 15 minutes in the end will be for question and answers. During the webinar, all the participants will be on mute only mode, that is listen only mode. If any participant would like to ask any question, they can write in the questions tab. It will be taken in the end of the webinar. If any participant is facing any difficulty in viewing the screen shared or listening to the presenter, I would request you to kindly log out and log in the webinar. If it continues, kindly drop a message in the chat and our technical person will look into the same. So today's webinar is presented by our partner, Phineas. Phineas Consulting is a management consulting firm specializing in accounting advisory, risk and compliance advisory, and CFO services. The firm is based out of Chennai and has 3 partners with rich corporate experience. Today, we are going to have 2 partners from the firm, that is Mr. Shivraman and Mr. Sridhar for the webinar. And I will now hand it over to Mr. Shivraman to take the discussion forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona Lisa. Thank you for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. And thanks a lot for taking time to attend this session. and I also welcome you all on behalf of Finnis Consulting. So before we actually get into the details of the topic, I will just give a brief overview of Finnis Consulting. So we are a management consulting firm, as Mona Lisa mentioned. We started off early this year. We have three partners, and we are predominantly based out of Chennai. The three of us, the partners in the firm, we come from a full corporate background. Collectively, we have over 55 years of corporate experience. And in their individual capacities, the partners have held positions like a CFO, resident director in some of the large corporate and listed entities in India. And from a risk and compliance domain, one of the partners was the chief audit executive and also held positions like the head of internal audit for again listed companies in India. So that's an introduction about us. And today's session, we will kind of go through the impact of COVID-19 on the internal control framework, and also specifically touching upon some of the aspects of the ICOFER requirements. So with that background, I will get into the session and take you through the agenda of how we would be going about in this session. So before that, let me just share my screen, and maybe Mona Lisa, if you can confirm once the presentation is up.
Yes, Mr. Shivraman.
Okay, so it's on the presentation mode, I'm assuming, or is it on the slide mode?
No, it's on site. It's not on presentation mode. Sorry.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Shivraman. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So thank you. Thanks a lot. So we will get into the topic. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, what we would like to cover over the next, I'd say about 40-45 minutes of our discussion, we will start with the basics. We will also have, in terms of, let's say, the objective for the session here is more to share some insights on what this impact of COVID-19 is on the internal control framework for the companies. And we'll also talk about some of the potential steps that companies can take to make their internal control framework more robust. And this session is kind of targeted to be as practical as possible, and also we'll keep it as relevant as possible to cater to the needs of each of the stakeholder in the internal control process. Now, stakeholders can be ranging from the board of directors, the governing body, the internal audit function, the management who have an oversight of the control execution and performance, and also the ultimate control owners who perform the activities. So that's the set of objectives or the target audience that we will try to cover. And each of these agenda areas will have insights which will meet the requirements of each of these stakeholders. And we will also give a brief overview of what is an internal control, which is what we will start with. And then we will follow it by how the COVID-19 has impacted the fundamental principles that are underlying the uh, internal control process. And then what challenges each stakeholder faces with some real life process issues and also some emerging risk areas. With that, we will also move on to a part on addressing these challenges and also give an overview of how different should an organization should look at or approach this particular internal control framework in terms of what we've done for the financial year close of 2019-20, which is March 31st, 2020, and what we should be looking at from a 2021 onwards perspective in terms of what sort of changes we need to make and how we should be looking at it from a different perspective. And at the end, we will have about 10 to 15 minutes of Q&A session, and we will try our best to address the questions that comes up from the audience. So in terms of the discussion today, we also have Mr. Sridhar. So he will jump in to share some practical insights or also give his perspectives in terms of the practical challenges that the companies or the corporates have faced in this last 3 months. So with that, I will move into the topic, and we will start with the basics. Now, again, we start with the basics because I think in the audience group today, we have quite a few people who are from core compliance and controls background. We do have people who are from an internal audit, and we do have people who are from a process background. So just to kind of get everyone onto the same page in terms of what is an internal control and what sort of methodologies or what sort of controls or frameworks does an organization have, and how they go about doing their activities or managing their internal control process, we will just touch upon few of the basic items. So in terms of a definition, as most of us would know, internal control is a process which is affected by the entity's own management. Now it can be the board of directors, management, etc, and the objective of this is to provide a reasonable assurance. Now it can be in terms of assurance regarding the objectives which are relating to your operation effectiveness. It can be with respect to your financial reporting, to have accurate financial reporting, and it can also be with respect to your objective on compliance to meet the statutory requirements. Now, with these objectives, the company or the organization sets up this whole process. Now, in terms of the scale or the size of the process which a company would adopt, it will again depend on the nature and size of operations of the entity and also their legal status. Typically, an Indian company, which is probably not listed or unlisted entities, wouldn't or would have a financial reporting controls alone. Companies which are listed in the US and have SOX requirements that are applicable to them, they will also, in addition to their financial reporting controls, they will also have some inbuilt fraud deterring controls. And large listed entities in India will also need to have a bit of board assurance and reporting on the operational and business controls, so which will be in the form of their entire internal financial control process. Now, irrespective of whichever framework or whatever set of controls that a company has or they adopt, there will also be some set of controls which will help them achieve these objectives or their financial reporting or the fraud deterring controls, etc. These are typically like your IT general controls, which will be for the IT environment or the systems that the company uses, and also on the entity level controls. So these entity level controls will typically set the tone at the top, how the organization as a whole reacts to compliance, how we interact with our third parties, how the roles and responsibilities are defined within the company. So, which will be the entity level controls. So, these are the set of framework or the set of controls that each entity, depending on their nature of business or size, would have in their internal control framework. And as part of the framework, every year companies would do a design effectiveness testing, and they will also do an operating effectiveness testing, which will ultimately be certified, or there'll be a result out of this which will be used to certify by the stakeholders and the board of directors and the statutory auditors. Now, when we talk about these frameworks, now how do we set a framework, or what is the basis how we define or how do we create a framework? Now, there's one methodology which is kind of renowned and which is adopted by most of the companies. Now, this is the COSO framework. So what you see on the left-hand side of the screen is the COSO cube. Now, this depicts the objectives of the company in terms of their IC framework, internal control framework, which will answer in terms of the why question, like why you should be having this framework. And then on the right hand side of the cube, it will depict in terms of the where question, like for which of the entities business units it is applicable, whether it's at an entity level, the division, operating unit, or what functions. And then the front side of the cube will depict the how question. So in terms of how do we go about setting up or building our control framework, what sort of parameters or components should we consider, and what are the principles that are inbuilt in each of these components that will help us to build a more robust sort of a framework using this methodology. So and when we talk about this COSO, and today we will be using this COSO cube as one of our bases to drive this discussion, also touch upon areas. Now, irrespective of whether an entity has adopted this framework or probably adopted an abridged version, uh, in terms of building their own principles for meeting their limited purposes, the overall ideology or the process should still be the same. So with that sort of background, we will move into a quick poll question. Now, this question is more in terms of understanding, or maybe just to get an overview of what each of you have done in your internal control framework since the month of March. So this is more to get an overview or an insight of how companies have already reacted and what percentage of changes or impact have you already seen and done. So with that, I will launch the poll question, and maybe I will just ask Mr. Sridhar to pitch in with some bit of his industry insights as well on this basics.
Yeah, so thanks, Shiva, for the nice introduction. Again, good morning to everyone on the call. So I think a part of the reason why we wanted to discuss on this topic is because as part of our interaction with the various clients, I think there seems to be a fair bit of ambiguity in terms of what needs to be done because of the impact created by COVID, and how do we keep all the necessary stakeholders happy in terms of our assessment of our internal control and its adequacy. And we all acknowledge that yes, COVID-19 has impacted the way we operate, the way companies operate. Global supply chains have gone for a toss. Our cash flows are getting impacted. Our say revenue forecast, our expense forecast, everything has gone for a toss. So probably we would request you to like view this session not necessarily only from the attest function, but also to understand what sort of impact COVID-19 has had on your control framework, and as a process owner or as a control owner, what are the steps you need to perform to understand the magnitude of the problem, and what are the mitigated and unmitigated risks. Yeah, over to you, sure. Thanks.
Okay, so with that, I launch this poll question. So it should have popped up on the screen now.
And I guess for those on the call, I don't think there's any right or wrong answer here. I think probably a answer to this question would help us understand the granularity of the level of detail in which we should, take the presentation forward.
Okay, so we still have responses coming in. Okay, so maybe we've had about 65% of the people who have voted. So maybe we will just, while we talk about the responses that have come through. So I think the broad idea that we're seeing is a lot of people have said they are in progress. There's roughly about 50% of the people who say they are still in progress. And there are about a good portion of 30% of people who say they've already completed the assessment, which is a very good sign and an indicator. And we do have about few percentage people who say they are yet to start or they don't foresee a change. So with that, we will probably close this particular poll question, and that kind of gives us an overview to say that yes, we do have a majority of our audience who say they are in progress, and few of them who say they've already completed a portion of this. Now, with that sort of background and insight, we will move into the topic, which is the first part that we want to touch upon is more on the impact of COVID-19. Now, when we say impact here, we want to talk about how the underlying principles in the control framework have been impacted. So, the reason why we want to touch upon these underlying principles is again primarily because the situation which came up was probably very sudden, and there was very limited time for each of the organization to react. So we probably got into a lockdown phase. It was announced, and in a couple of days, we all had to shut our businesses, and it was more of a very reactive time situation that we had at that point in time. And it was also a timing where it was close to our financial year end, and in the midst of the lockdown, a lot of companies had to do their year close. They were racing against time to kind of complete their financials, get it audited, and also report their numbers. Now in this scenario, we kind of believe that, or we've also seen in a couple of our clients where some of the steps that the companies have taken were sort of reactive, and they were pretty impulsive, like how do I kind of handle this to meet the situation of my book close. Now, is that what was the ideal solution, or have we addressed everything that was an impact for us? Maybe that's where we wanted to take a step back, and probably now we are into the financial year for 2020 and 21. So it's probably the ideal time that companies actually take a step back to look at how this COVID is impacted in their overall the principles or their methodology that they've followed for their internal control, which will kind of help them also measure the impact. And only when we understand what processes or what steps in our internal control framework have been impacted and also the measure of this impact, we will be able to have a more focused approach in terms of saying who are the stakeholders who face real challenges, and then what should the company or what should we do as an internal control function, or what should the management do to address each of these challenges and how to fix them. So that's precisely the reason why we wanted to touch upon the impact to each of these principles. Again, here for the purpose of this discussion today, we've gone or we've taken the COSO framework principles, the 17 principles that have been defined in the COSO framework as our sort of starting point. Now, again, just a word of caution: if there are companies which have adopted and or built an internal control framework more in an abridged way, not let's say not in a very complicated way, which is required or more from meeting their objectives, the overall principles or the ideologies would still be the same. uh, you would have still assessed your control environment, you would have still done your risk assessment, you would have still identified what are your control activities, you would have still built your information and communication channel in terms of training your control owners, and you would have still built your monitoring activities. So we will touch upon these five sort of components and what principles within each of these components have seen an impact. Now, these impact may be significant for some companies. These may be probably a very, I would say, just a timing issue, or it may not be a significant or a permanent impact for a lot of these companies. So here we try to give you a set of perspective from our side where we believe that the impact has been significant, which is how we've also color coded each of these components. So we will go one by one in terms of a control environment, which sort of talks about the overall tone at the top, how the management is built a robust framework, how our team is structured, or how in terms of managing the roles and responsibilities the company has performed. So those are the principles which are defined in the COSO framework. Now, if you have to compare it with in my environment, have I seen an impact everywhere? Yes, there are few areas where we will have an impact. We've done companies would have done some I would say bypass arrangement in terms of the authority responsibility lines, purely because of absence of people or non-availability of resources or people working remotely, etc. We would have done a bit of I would say makeshift arrangement there. Our talent management, yes, there will still be some questions around it in terms of availability of people, who does what role, Is there some sort of a segregation of issue, challenges, etc.? In terms of data security and privacy, yes, because of the sudden IT environment which changed, we will have challenges there. And also in terms of the overall relevance of objectives, in terms of what the company defined its internal control framework for, is it more from operating effectiveness, or my controls more defined for just a regulatory purposes? Now in this given scenario, do I have to relook at those objectives to say, okay, maybe we use it, as Sridhar was earlier mentioning, do we use this as a point to build a robust framework which can help add value to the management and drive our businesses more effectively and efficiently? So that's one area that we will have to look at, which has an impact. Similarly, if I have to look at the risk assessment and control activities, now this, in our opinion, is a place where there has been a significant impact, right? Starting from what is the risk appetite of the organization. Now, do we have to look at things in a different way? What were our critical processes before, and what is going to be our critical processes going forward? How significant has an impact been from an external factor? Do we foresee more such external impacts affecting us, and how do we prepare ourselves for it? And also in terms of how relevant is my control framework today? Do I have to relook at my control framework, or how do I modify that? Yes, there have been questions, and there's a significant impact in that area. And also in terms of the control activities, now that you've identified your risk, how do you build your controls now? What risk existed prior to COVID? Do they still exist, or is something new? Is there something new that has come up? And is the way how I've been managing my risk, is it changed in the current scenario? So do you have to look at new controls and revise processes? Is my IT application changing? Am I adding new applications? Am I using some temporary set of IT systems? And also in terms of my underlying policies, documents, SOPs, procedures, which form the basis of how an activity or a work is to be done by the control owner. Now, if there are changes in control owners, or if there are changes in the way how things are being done, how is my overall documentation in terms of my SOPs and policies getting impacted? This, in our view, are the two main areas where we should sort of focus our efforts on, because this is a significant impact in terms of one, applicability. Most of the companies would have an impact in these areas, and also the size and scale. Yes, most of our controls would have been impacted. Most of our uh, ways of operation, or the relevance, or adding new controls or IT framework, would have seen a significant impact. So this is an area where we should be focusing our efforts on going forward, which is for the 2021 March 31st financial year close. Similarly, on the information and communication, yes, there is an impact, but it might not be very significant, because ultimately my control owners know what is the process, or they would still, I would assume that they will still know how they should be performing their activities. Yes, maybe we have a fragile or an unpredictable near term outlook, but ultimately when we adopt a typical, or a different working style, we would have a more robust way of how we can drive down these control requirements to our associates. So we don't see a typical challenge in that portion. The last one, which is on the monitoring, yes, there will be an impact in the monitoring activities as well, because again, from a control owner or a control execution person point of view, he will be impacted in terms of how to do the activity when I don't get to the office. How do I document it? How do I test my controls? What sort of evidences do I create? Are my evidences going to be consistent? These are some of the sort of impact which will be there at a control owner level. So that's typically the scale or the impact which will be there in the underlying principles for each of these, I'd say the steps, or the guiding factors in your internal control methodology. So it's more of a thought that we would want to leave it with each of the stakeholders, to kind of look at how it's going to affect them, or what is the impact that they see in their respective areas, before they kind of say, okay, fine, this change is good enough, or only this many changes into this particular area, or adding some new controls is good enough for me. Before they kind of conclude on that, it's good to relook at this particular impact assessment. Now with that, sort of thought process, we will move on to a next quick poll question. Now, this is again more to understand in terms of, yes, we have companies who've said, or we've had audience who've said they've completed it. Just to more to brainstorm or look at it from a different perspective and say, have we looked at all these aspects, and then say we've completed it. And for people who say they are in progress also, just to understand whether this is something that we've already factored in, or we have to look at something in a maybe in a different perspective. So with that, I will move into the second poll question, and post that we will get into the impact for each of the stakeholders. Okay, so I will just launch the second poll question, and it should come up on your screen now.
Mr. Shivraman,
Yep.
please do share the poll results also, because last poll participants were not able to view the poll results.
Perfect. I didn't click on the share button. I will click it now.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and while you're all answering the poll questions, so from our experience again and discussions with the chief audit executives and the CFOs, clearly during this time, continuity of operations or the business operations has taken precedence over everything else, and rightfully so. So, and as they say, controls follow processes. So, organizations have focused on keeping the business moving in spite of all the challenges. So, this sort of had a ripple effect or a cascading effect on controls, your SOD, segregation of duties controls, or fraud risk controls. And we're able to see organizations are impacted to varying degrees, but there is clearly no denying the fact that yes, controls have, or the control framework has taken a hit, and it's up to us as either the governing body or the management or the enabling function, particularly the risk managers, to assess the impact and give a true and fair picture to the necessary stakeholders.
Perfect. Thank you, Sridhar. So, okay. So I think we have 50% of the audience who've already voted for it. So maybe I think in the interest of time, we will close this poll and then take a minute to talk about the results as well. So we see that about a good portion of the audience feel that they've addressed probably 20 to 40% of their activities. Now, which in one way, if I have to interpret it, if you've addressed your risk assessment and your control activities, then probably it means that we've kind of covered a majority of our say impacted areas. If we've not looked into those two areas in detail, then probably it's something that we will have to revisit as well. So, okay, so thank you so much for those responses. Now I will just move on to the next topic or the next segment, which is, now that we've seen the impact, it's also good to understand how this impact has created a challenge for each of the stakeholder. Now, because we have multiple stakeholders in the overall internal control framework, governing body, the management, who oversee the execution of controls, and also the operational teams which actually perform these activities. It's probably good to sort of understand what would be the thought process, or what would be the questions that each of these people or would be looking at. Typically, from a governing body, the challenges or probably the questions that might come up is, how do the board and statutory auditors certify that internal control framework was effective? How do I say that my processes are so robust that I can do an accurate financial reporting, and is my overall risk management very effective? So this is again from an independent or from a person who's at a governance level. One level down, in terms of a management perspective, they will be more focused on ensuring that are my controls well established, and am I able to review them properly? Is my control owner accountable and following his control activities effectively and efficiently? And also, have we safeguarded the assets of the company? And typically from a operations perspective, he's going to be more worried about, in terms of, am I doing my job correctly? Is there any non-compliance which comes from my set of activities? And also, am I maintaining all my process documents and the evidences that are needed for a control execution, demonstrate a control execution? Am I maintaining all those effectively? So now if we have to look at that a little bit more in detail in terms of what each person would face as a challenge, a governing body will have to relook at their accessions, their risk appetite. There's a heightened fraud risk that has come up. We'll have to look at the technology portion in terms of how we've adopted new technologies. Do we relook at our IT general controls? How good is my third party risk management framework? Am I going to revisit my entire third party risk management framework? Or companies which have probably not adopted this in the past, do we have to look at this in the future? And then how do I actually build a complete oversight in terms of doing an effective internal audit, scoping the internal audit or executing it remotely, and how good will the quality of these reviews be? So these are some of the challenges or questions which will be in terms of or in terms of the governing body, what they should be, in our view, looking at. Typically, in terms of a management or a person who's executing or the oversight of controls, he'll be looking at how frequent are my design and operational steps in the controls happening, how my control owners are actually passing on the information saying that there is a step deviation, or to just to meet the operational challenges, we're doing these activities in a different way as compared to what is defined in the SOP. How do we highlight these, and how do we bring about any control issues or gaps because of these changes? And how do we actually document at the end of the year? How do we demonstrate it to our external reviewers, auditors, or the internal audit team, saying that the control has performed and we have a repository of all these evidences which is available? Now again, typically companies which would have done a manual filing, signature, review, sign off documents, now how do we actually go about doing it today? Do we still adopt those? Do we have a workaround? Do we rely on emails, etc.? Maybe those are the challenges or thoughts that we need to put in. And similarly, in terms of control testing, what is going to be my sample? What's going to be my frequency? How do I relook at those areas of control testing? That's something that we should be looking at. Now, in terms of a control owner, again, he's more concerned about the completeness of his risk and control matrix. He's more concerned about how he's going to document his evidence, how he's going to self-certify for any design change that has happened. He's going to look at if my control owners, if I keep changing, if it's a temporary change or a permanent change of the person who does the control, how that's going to be reflected in my RCMs. If there are physical verification related controls, how do I go about doing it? And also, what are my dependencies on the infrastructure? Now, these are some of the thoughts or the questions that will come up, or the challenges that each of these stakeholders will face. And then this probably one level down will probably be at a process level as well, in terms of what are the kind of process level risks that we will be looking at, or what we would have already identified. Now some of these would be areas that we have pre-identified and defined, and we would have put in measures in the past. We might have robust controls for these. Now it's just to uh, kind of give a thought to say that, okay, maybe you will have to probably look at these aspects if you've not already done so. Again, touching on some of these areas, which is on the physical verifications, it can be on your plant, property, equipment, if you have to trigger an impairment for these areas. Receivables, yes, this is something which is very, I would say, a critical aspect in terms of how you manage your credit limits or your credit control procedures for your customers. Do you have to revisit in terms of what would be the credit limit that are allowed to customers, and then how do we actually map it into our SAP or our ERP systems, those aspects. And inventory is one area. Again, we'll have to look at, as Shira was touching upon earlier, in terms of the supply chain being channels being stressed. How do we reevaluate our procedures? Do we have to look at our in-transit inventory? How do we monitor those differently? From a revenue perspective, in terms of our sales contracts, do we have to relook at them in a different way? Are they still enforceable? Are they still valid? Do we have to kind of look at our revenue recognition criteria? Is this impacted? Segregation of duty, IT general controls, entity level controls. Again, these are areas that we did touch upon previously as well, in terms of who does what activity. If you have multiple people who've given the access to do a similar job just for want of resources or associates, how do we manage those? How do we constantly monitor them? IT general controls, typically in the nature of adding new applications as a workaround. How do we use, whether we use some mobile third-party mobile applications? How do we review it once again after the lockdown is announced? Whether we've reviewed them once again. Entity level, in terms of your third-party risk management, how is the manage and how is our management internally established their tone at the top and reiterating the importance of the controls? So these are some of the areas at a process level risk that a company might have to relook at, or if they've already done, probably just ensure that there are enough measures and controls in these areas. And quickly moving on into the next area, which is also, now that we have an impact and we are trying to recreate or modify our existing risks and control framework, there are also some of the emerging risk areas that we probably need to look at. Now, a new working model is something that we've all been talking about. Now, till it stabilizes, until we say that yes, this is going to be my new working model, it's probably going to be one of those ideologies that we're going to be discussing and creating. Now, in these scenarios, how do we actually ensure that some of the main aspects or risk areas are well covered? Now, some thoughts to consider would be on your remote working areas, which will also include, like, say, are we going to invest in some off the shelf software? Do we have an IT approval for each of these? And then the overall IT infrastructure and the protocols. Like, say, are we going to adopt a VPN? Are we going to do file sharing? Are we going to use a third-party mobile application, etc.? So these are some of the things that we should look at more from, one, in terms of the data privacy protection, etc., and also from the ease of use and how business is able to use these technologies to get their job done. The second part that we should be looking at is more in terms of people and behavior. Again, it's a very tricky topic. Now, typically, if companies are having financial challenges, now how is it going to reflect or trigger an uncharacteristic behavior? That's something that we need to watch out for. And also, in terms of, let's say, if majority of our workforce is going to be working remotely, how do we kind of stay connected, and how do we kind of build that uh, a culture of one organization when people are in multiple locations? Third party risks, as I've touched upon earlier, maybe one part we should in addition to that we should look at is in terms of the continuity and backup plans for the third party, whether we need to look at any backup options, or let's say how the third party is able to provide its services on a continuous basis. Business disruptions, again, BCP, most of the companies would have a BCP plan. Now, in that, we will probably have to relook at how we are going to be bringing our associates back to office, any risks that are associated with that, in terms of, let's say, a temporary lockdown, or in terms of our cleanup costs, etc., how we are going to be looking at those areas. Employee benefits may be a unique aspect. Do we have to relook at our, say, the employee term insurance? Do we have to relook at our keyman insurance policy, typically for the senior management? Contract management, again, we would say it's a critical aspect. You'll have to reassess on your buy side and sell side, uh, whether there are any performance obligations, whether any liabilities arise from these obligations, and then if there are going to be any onerous contracts which are going to be non-profitable to us, and then how do we kind of go about valuing those particular contracts? These are some of the topics that we should look at. Management override, it's something which is also determined as a principle in your, should be defined as a principle in internal control framework. So typically, if we are having too many overrides in our processes just to get the activities done, now how these overrides are really impacting our framework, or in terms of the effectiveness of our controls, that's something that, as an internal control or as an oversight body, we need to have a overview on, like, in terms of, are we having too many management overrides in these scenarios? Now, that's on the touching upon on each of these areas and also some of the risks that people should consider, or if you've already considered, which is you just want to give those thoughts there. Now, with that, we will quickly move on to a last and final poll question. Now, this is more in terms of understanding. Let's say if we have uh, let's say foreseen the challenges. Now, what is the challenge that at the balance sheet date each of us foresee? Now, is it going to be in terms of we're going to say that no, we don't see any challenge, or we see that we've already addressed, we've identified, we've addressed, or we yet to assess? And also in terms of saying we are in progress, probably we are yet to kind of identify if we have a completeness in terms of our challenges. Okay, maybe I think I did a mistake. I didn't share the last poll results as well. I will definitely do this one.
Mr. Shivraman, we could see the last results of the poll.
Oh, you could see it. Okay, I
Yes.
thought it still showed me as a share,
No,
so I
we
thought
could.
it didn't happen.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, so we've getting a fair bit of results on this as well. Maybe few more seconds, and then we will close and move on with the topic. Okay, so as we've got, I think roughly 50% of the people have voted, and again, there's a fair share in terms of people who feel that they're unsure of the completeness. There's a good proportion of people who believe that yes, there are still areas that we might not know or we might not have seen, and there are also people who already mentioned that they've addressed these and they've already taken action for these. So, okay, so thanks a lot for this opinion. Now, with this, we will move on to the next slide, where we will try to share our perspective on what sort of checks or what sort of steps each stakeholder can take to address the challenges. And with this, we will probably be able to kind of cross-reference and see whether we've probably done most of it, and if there are things that we've done better than what is expected, then it's probably the ideal situation. So again, we try to break it down in terms of the governing body, how they should be looking at this situation, what sort of steps or some of the steps that they should be looking at, uh, and from a management perspective in terms of an oversight function, what are the
Shiva,
activities that
sorry
they
to interrupt you. I think we need to move to the next slide. I think you're still showing the poll results. Sorry.
okay. um, Okay, I think I haven't stopped sharing the poll results. Sorry. Okay, so now I think the screen should be visible.
Yes, it is visible. Thanks.
Okay, done. Sorry. So again, we break it down by each of these stakeholders, the governing body, the management, and also the operational teams, what they should be doing. In terms of a governing body, I think what we sort of believe is that there should be a more constant audit committee monitoring on the impact and likelihood of the risks from the key controls. This is more to identify if the changes or the risk assessment that I do, and I come up with a list of so many controls or key controls where there is a change or a design change or an operating effectiveness issue. I think it should not be like we have like everything is going to be impacting us, or there's a likelihood of this risk materializing for all these key controls. So there has to be a sort of an oversight to ensure that we focus our energy and efforts on uh, only those key controls and process changes which are going to significantly impact the organization. And again, we also recommend looking at a more focused internal audit reviews. This can also be kind of driven by business critical processes or processes which are fraud risk prone, etc. And then also implement a process of self control, self assessment with changes being highlighted. Now this is more like for the current year 2020-21, where there are constant changes. How do you sort of do a self assessment, and what are the basic expectations, which also sort of sets the tone at the top in terms of the management expectations on what each stakeholder or what each control owner should do when they do their self assessment. Adoption of technology, this again depends on the company's sort of I would say their perspective, whether they want to go into an automated tools which will help them monitor their internal audit or their internal control processes, or probably use it to whatever limited extent that can help them give a comfort that they have a good control over the completeness and the efficiency of this process. From a management perspective, I think the more focus would be on your risk and control matrices. How often do you constantly review them and monitor them, rather than just adding few controls or looking at only the key controls? Probably the idea should be to look at the entire risk and control matrices on a periodic basis and see if they need some modification. And there has to be an open communication channel with the control owners, which should be established, so that the oversight body also gets to understand how people are navigating the changes, or how they are actually getting the job done. So that's something which will help you feed the results into your RCM to see whether there's something that's getting significantly impacted and you need to modify it. And the workflow and processes for defining or documenting your evidences and how you capture them in a remote environment, that's something that people should look at. And in terms of policy changes, which is more from an IT perspective, like what sort of tools people can use, how people should adopt a technology, or what is their allowable practices, what is not an allowable practice from a data privacy perspective. Those are the messages that the oversight or the management function will have to kind of lay down. From an operating team, I think they should more focus on getting the job done, and also keeping their RCMs updated. And if there are any potential weaknesses or gaps, how often or how soon do they flag these and escalate it to the second line of defense and to the management. So the overall theme, or in terms of the way how we can sort of address this challenges to an extent, if we have an oversight function which will lay down the tone, which has a periodic oversight, again going by the principles, relooking at how often do we monitor our environment, then how often do we do our risk assessment and redefine our control activities, and the monitoring activities, how often does a person does and how effectively do they do it. So if we are able to lay down this how and who question, we will probably be able to find a solution, or we will be able to meet these challenges with a very effective solution. Now with that, we kind of go into the last area of our discussion. Now this is just to draw a reference between what have we done in 2020, which is for the financial year close 2020, and what do we expect to do going forward. So typically for year 2020-21, for balance sheet as at 31st March 21, do we see some challenges? Do we need to do something differently, or have the changes or the new approaches that we have taken good enough for me to meet those challenges? So just to throw some insights on what we would have ideally done in our existing companies. Typically in 1920, we would have just aligned as a one-off exercise with our statutory auditors and the board on the completeness of the program, which would be for that 1 week of impact. We would have redone our controls. We would have probably retested controls where activities happened in that last 1 week. Maybe SOD conflicts that resulted in transactions during that last week of March would have probably been picked up for a retesting. Now, is this sufficient, or is this something that we adopt as a practice for 21? Maybe not. we probably have to look at something more in detail, which is where we should probably look at if we can relook at our entire RCM matrix for 21. We bring in these new controls, and we have sort of a method where any changes, design change or an operational change in the way how a control is performed is reflected, or there is adequate flagging, communication, and monitoring of all those step outs from processes. That's something that we need to look at. How my SOD is getting impacted, what is the timing, do I have to really put in a mitigating control for each of these activities or cases where there is a conflict. uh, Again, on the IT front, applications, do I use anything other than the enterprise assets? Do I have to relook at my IT privacy and security? I have to do a risk assessment for these areas. And also, how do I move forward by adopting some of the technology tools, or do I have to invest in something to get this process more effective and more robust? Probably these are the thoughts that we would want to sort of leave it with each of you to say, okay, fine, we've probably addressed these, we've probably looked at these challenges, we've kind of laid down this method or solution to address these challenges, and is this good enough? How am I going to look at it compared to last year and from a futuristic perspective? So these are some of our thoughts and probably discussion areas that we wanted to sort of lay down in today's session. I know we've kind of overshot on time. We promised about 10 minutes on the Q&A, but we give you much shorter time, but we'll try to address as many questions as possible. And if we are not able to kind of answer a few of them, if you can just drop your name or email ID, we will definitely try to get back to you with the answers for each of these questions. So I will just quickly look at some of the questions which have come up. Okay, so there is a question on how can risk assessment be specifically affected by COVID? What will be the change in risk assessment procedure during COVID? Need few examples. So yeah, it's a nice question. So thanks a lot for that. Now, typically when we talk about risk assessment, maybe I'll give you a theoretical view, and I'll let Sridhar give a practical view on this. So typically we would have done a process level assessment saying which are the areas or which are the steps which are going to be my key risk in this process, for example in order to cash or a treasury or a banking operations, and would have determined which are going to be my key controls and which are going to be my non-key controls in these areas. Now, typically because of this COVID impact and the operations of the company being affected, and we are working in a different environment or different process flows, has this resulted in some of my non-key controls being promoted as a key control, or am I doing my activity in a different way? Maybe one example I can give is the bank payments. Typically you need multiple signatories authorizing the payment on the bank portal, etc. Now if we don't have people available, or if you're not able to sign these payment documents to submit to the bank, etc., how do we authorize, or how do we give this access to someone else to ensure that the payment process keeps running? Now this is something which will trigger a lot of questions in terms of your authorizations or your approvals, and in terms of who is authorizing, is there a conflicting role, etc. So it kind of, one change can trigger multiple questions, and that's probably why we need to sort of relook at our risk assessment.
Yeah. And to also supplement what Shiva said, I think the risk assessment needs to be like revisited, or we need to have a fresh look, because, so as I was alluding earlier, right now the focus for companies is to like keep the business running. So the risk perception for the controls has changed. What was earlier probably a low risk or a medium risk control has become high risk. We are privy to organizations where I think in the interest of keeping the payments running, they sort of gave the entire power to one or two individuals in the treasury team, as against say 5, 6 individuals earlier. And that was driven probably by the practical reasons, because we had the CFO in some remote corner of North India, the treasury head or the other signatories in different parts of the country, and it was practically difficult for them to sort of execute transactions. On the other, say, classic low risk item so far, and probably which is now assuming importance, is around your say employee welfare, around safety trainings. I know organizations which have asked, even though we are still in lockdown phase in majority of our cities, I know organizations which have asked some select employees to come in to the office and continue working and supporting some of the critical functions. So there you had probably the safety training and the necessary protocols, safety protocols, assuming precedence over, say, a lot of other things. So we need to have, I mean, as control owners or as a, I mean, function which has oversight, we need to like sort of relook at the existing controls, particularly the risk perceptions, and do a fresh reassessment, risk assessment. Right.
Thank you, Shreya. So I think there's one more question on the similar risk assessment topics, which was about how do we proceed for risk assessment due to COVID-19. Again, from a process perspective, I have to kind of mention that it's in my view, I think we should start from the scratch. We should probably relook at how we would do risk assessment in a normal scenario. It's just that we need to have in the back of our mind the situational changes that have happened, and also factor in some of the external impact which could come into or which could impact the organization. I think these
Yeah.
are the, in my view, these are the two key things. If we keep it in parallel with our existing risk assessment process, we should be able to identify the majority of the impact which has come from this unique situation of COVID.
Yeah, I would say you should probably start with the control owner or the process owner. Probably sit with them, understand what I mean, where all the changes have been affected, and probably as a oversight function, it's for us to like sort of translate the changes into how it fits into my risk control matrix framework, and sort of design your test and control procedures around the changes made. But I would say you'll have to go at a granular level, and you have to probably have a bottoms up approach, starting with the control owner or the process owner.
Okay, perfect. There's one technical question. Unfortunately, I wouldn't know the answer for this, but probably we will probably check and come back. It was on useful life of investment property, which is constructed to earn lease rental. Maybe we'll have to get back on that. And um, we do have a question on what would be additional control for inventory in COVID. Okay, again, my perspective on this is new controls may not be needed for every organization. Now you will probably have majority of your inventory controls relating to your storage, your ordering, your receiving, in terms of physical inventory count, in terms of scrap management or destruction of unused inventory. Manufacturing companies would have their BOM or production consumption related controls. Your financial accounting process will take care of the accounting for inventory, valuations, everything. So there's nothing that will probably be a new control that you will have to look at, in my opinion. But what you will have to relook at is some of the methodologies, how you're going to be performing these controls. One example, the probably the simplest of example, is a physical control. How are we going to go about doing it? Are we just going to rely on a book reconciliation process? Are we going to do uh, at some random point in time where we are all allowed to get into the office space or factory, we do a count and then we do a uh, reconciliation of it? What methodology is a company going to adopt, and how is it going to give the management comfort that I don't have an inventory loss or an incorrect reporting there? Probably that's what we should be looking at more from a procedural point of view. How are we managing it in terms of receiving or in terms of storing? How is that happening? Who's there at the factory, or how do they ensure that? Those sort of areas is where we will have to look at. Maybe one other part that you can look at, which can be linked to your buy side contract management, will be in terms of is there going to be some obligations on your purchase orders or your contracts for purchases that you have entered into, some long-term purchases, etc. If those needs some changes or modifications, whether those need to be included as a new control there, or some of those need to be upscoped as a key control from a non-key control. That's probably my view on this. Okay, so I think we've spent about 5 minutes, and maybe just in the interest of time, we will probably close this particular session. And we thank you all for your time spending 1 hour with us today on this. We hope that this session was useful to you. If not, we've answered all your questions. At least we've answered some part of your challenges or questions, and we've at least given you some new perspectives in this particular area. And maybe just closing note again, as Mona Lisa introduced, Finesse Consulting, management consulting firm, our core services in terms of we typically do CFO services, and we kind of handhold that with risk and compliance, accounting advisory tools, and training and building. And you can reach out to any of us, be it Sridhar, myself, or Sundar, who's unable to join us for this session today. You can reach out to any of us. Our email IDs and phone numbers are there. And also you can reach us on our website or on our LinkedIn or through our email, which is there. So I think a couple of few of you have asked about the presentation, so which I will kind of discuss with Mona Lisa, and I will ensure that I kind of pass it on to her, and then see how we can get it to people who needed this. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, Mona Lisa, for
Thank you so
organizing
much, Mr.
this
Shibraman.
session. Thank you,
Thank you, Mr.
Sridhar. And
Shibraman.
Thanks, everyone. Hope the session
Thank
was
you,
useful.
Mr. Sridhar. Thank you, everyone, for joining the webinar, and have a nice day.
Thank
yep,
you.
you too. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye.